Okay, so we talked a lot last week about all of the new clubs coming out. And I think, we got a lot of comments and interest, and we've also had a few friends that have been asking us about fitting, right? What to look for. Some of them have not gotten the best experiences, but just in general, a lot of questions. So I thought it'd be interesting to just ask, what should you look for when you're buying your next driver? So let's do it this way. Let's say, Charles, tomorrow you're going to go buy a new driver. Walk me through, what do you do?
So for me, there's a couple categories that, and these are, I think I'm going to try to put it in the order of priority. In golf, I always need to feel confident in the way that my driver looks. So looks actually is on top of the list. For my drivers, they have to look square at impact. And there are some drivers that, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but they are purposely created to either look slightly open or closed at impact. I like mine looking very square. The second thing, which we kind of touched up on when we were going through drivers last week, is the crown shape. I need my crown shape to look a bit more compact. I think you used the word traditional crown shape, but yeah, I can't deal with drivers that are big. And those, obviously, we talked about MOI last week and how those are the most forgiving because the weight is pushed out into the perimeter. But I just struggle with drivers that look very big. So I like that compact look. And I know a lot of drivers these days are kind of moving away from it, and they don't really have alignment aids for drivers, but I actually prefer drivers with no alignment aids. So depending on the brand, some brands will put, usually it's their logo, where kind of the middle of the face should be. But right. I find that to be oddly distracting. And depending on how much, you're putting your hands high or low, that face will rotate and it'll actually kind of distort the view and lie to you. So because of that, I prefer there to be no alignment aids or visuals on the
Not even that dot.
The dot is okay. The dot's okay, but you also don't find dots on drivers. Most of them are usually the logo of the brand.
It's like the TaylorMade tee is right there. So so this is really interesting because I think a lot of the things you talked about definitely have some brand correlations, let's call it, right? Certain brands tend to be a certain way, right? Like Titleist always is a little bit more traditional looking. I feel like TaylorMade is, a little bit more of the more streamlined shape. I'm dating myself, but Callaway from like 10 years ago, it was very stretched, the Diablo line, and I hated it. So do you find yourself having more brand affinity because this is so important for you, or do you feel a little bit more open and you don't really go in with any brand in mind?
Well, the only two brands that I've really played driver-wise is TaylorMade and Callaway. So maybe that does show some sort of brand affinity. I will say this kind of comes in a little bit later, but usually for me, I buy an aftermarket shaft that I am fitted for and feel comfortable with. And even if I get a new driver head, I will use that shaft. So that does come into a little bit of, do I want to change the adapter of my shaft?
Right.
But in terms of brands, they all now have a very tour-inspired compact look. And it's usually in their low spin model. So I haven't had an issue finding a shape that I didn't like from any particular brand, but it does very much narrow down depending on the year to either one, maybe maximum two models that I like the look of. I definitely can't play any of like the max forgiveness drivers from most brands.
Interesting. Okay. So first is looks, the face angle, the crown shape, which I agree with you. I think there's, I think for the driver and the putter, there's this weird thing of like, as much as there's the performance, which is obviously very important, you kind of have to like how it looks. I guess that's all clubs, but I agree with you there. Okay. So what's next after your looks? Where are you going?
So next is another subjective thing, but I have to like the way it sounds and how it feels. So this is the reason why I cannot play in the past ping drivers. I hated the way that they sounded, even though launch data wise, a little bit on the shorter end, but fairway finders, right? They're so forgiving. But the turbulator is another thing that I hated the look of. So number one, they couldn't pass the look test, but once I tried it out, the sound was also just so loud that I just don't love the sound and feel. And another reason why I moved away from TaylorMade the moment that they went to carbon face is that I did not like the sound and I didn't like the feel. The sound felt much more muted than TaylorMade's of the past. And so even when I strike something well, it didn't have this confidence just from a sound perspective that this was a great shot. So that's one of the reasons I moved away from TaylorMade. And so far, I think the last couple of years, Callaway has fit the sound and feel side of things that I like the most. But that is the second thing that I look for is the sound and feel of a driver. And very, very subjective because what I like, someone else might hate or not like. But yeah, that's been a very big thing for me.
What was the last ping driver that you tried that you remember?
I want to say it was one of the was it the G30 Max? Is that the one?
That was the obnoxious year. The G30, because I had a G30. That was the like really loud, obnoxious, like you would startle everyone at the range year. I think starting from the 400 line, they brought the sound back to like normal decibel levels where you're not gonna like shatter your own eardrums. But the turbulators are still there. But they did get rid of the Dragonfly, the weird like window. Do you remember those? They had like this weird like sunk in windows on the top of the crown that looked like a dragonfly wing. I think they were calling it Dragonfly. I mean, you would have hated it. If you hated the turbulators, you would have absolutely hated that. So there's no point. But I'd be curious with the 440 Max K, is that the new one? What it sounds like, because I know that they have intentionally like dialed their sound because they got so many complaints.
The G440s from last year sounded pretty good. They sound, but they still have the, and you know, they went for a more sleeker look, but the crown still has the turbulators, right? So
yeah, it still has the turbulators. I mean, they put so much marketing around the turbulators when it came, like I remember when it came out, it was so like, you know, they were showing like the smoke, like the wind tunnel smoke, the aerodynamic things, and they were like making so much argument around like how it increases speed, the stability, and everything. Like at this point, how do you walk away from that, right? Like after claiming that these things that you put on the crown are like supposed to revolutionize this club, like can you walk away from that? I don't know. I feel like they would have to like seriously come up with some kind of other tech to distract people if they're not going to have the turbulators anymore.
Oh yeah. It would definitely be a changing of the guard. Like, because ping is so almost synonymous with that now. When you look at it from the crown, you know that's a ping driver. And so it would kind of be almost like a identity change of what ping drivers are. So I can see why it's difficult to move away, but they are one of the main reasons why I don't play a ping driver.
That's fair. Okay, what's next?
So the next is I like to feel from a tech standpoint that there is something that differentiates a driver from the previous years or from the one that I'm playing right now. So what tech that they have and how that supports my swing is very important. And you know, we know that most of it is marketing, and I know that most of it is marketing, and the improvements are so small. It's incremental, right? Like for example, twist face. Even if you hit it, the ball is not going to go straight on the high toe or low heel. But I think it's more about the confidence that is there. That even if I hit it, it's not going to slice 50 yards. It'll just slice 45 yards.
Right.
Yeah. But I am a sucker for, I think, that technology marketing, which is why this year the Cobra Optims are on the front of the list of things I wanted to try. And so far from people that I've spoken to that have tried it in the Bay, I've heard some really good stuff. Some really good stuff. I have a friend who is known to slice, and he said he hit 20 shots and he only sliced twice. The ball was pushed, but it was pushed like 25, 30 yards. It didn't slice 50 yards. So obviously I haven't tried it yet, but technology like that is just something that works so well in terms of a marketing aspect for me.
Yeah. I want to try it. I want to see, because there's a part of me that's like, no POI or MOI, any of the OIs are going to fix an open face, right? So if your friend is saying all of a sudden his slicing reduced significantly, right? My question is how, right? It's like, is the club squaring up better for him, right? Or like maybe the weight and the shaft, he's able to deliver it a little bit better. But purely from like the club isn't going to twist, like that shouldn't reduce. And let's say he was hitting, I don't know, like 80% slices, right? Down to like 10%. Like that shouldn't happen just because the physics of the club head changes, right? So I'm very curious why he's performing so much better. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is something there. But if it's going to fix slices, I'm down to try.
Well, when a club face does twist, and even the high MOI faces do twist, right? When it does twist, it makes an open face even more open, and the ball roll on the club face longer. And so I could see how if it doesn't do that, then it'll look like a power fade instead of a slice.
You're getting less of the gear effect, pushing it even further right, especially if you're hitting it. I guess that's heel, right? Like that's a heel strike at that point. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, I believe your friend, but somehow part of me is like, that doesn't sound right. Like I want to see it because like the physics in my mind, it just doesn't sound possible.
And for me, I was also like, how much of this is placebo? Like how much is this in his mind that this is such a square driver that he can't slice? And but if that works, I mean, placebo does work even in healthcare, right? So I don't know, but golf is so psychology based. And so I feel like if it helps them, that's good marketing. And another thing about marketing for this year, Quantum from Callaway, they've actually introduced carbon face. I don't know if you've heard, but their club face is now carbon in the back and titanium in the front so that you get the benefits of carbon, but you still get the sound and feel of the titanium face, which most golfers like. So the TaylorMade QI4D, which was on the top of my list, has slowly fallen lower. It's now third on my list. I want to try the Optum first, the Quantum, and then the QI4D. So this tech marketing does kind of influence me.
Okay. But this is only influencing you from like, what are you willing to even try? Right. Right. So then where do you start making your decision? Right. So like now you're in the bay, you're about to throw down a few $100s, right? You have your short list. Like, what are you looking for personally? And, I think you and I have gone together to the store enough that like, I kind of know, but like, I would love for you to walk through some of our listeners. Like, what should they be looking for? Like, what are you looking for when you start hitting these clubs?
Sure. There's one more thing I think in the tech which influences me greater than just marketing, which is adjustability. So I don't recommend this for all of our listeners or for all golfers even, but I feel I know my misses and my swing well enough that I want the adjustability to be able to fine tune a driver to fit me. And so it is very difficult to sell me on a kind of rigid driver without that much adjustability because I feel like it's created for the masses and not for me. So that is another component of tech that I do look for. And I will play around with the adjustability a little bit, but obviously I don't have, I can't stand there for hours taking up one bay. That's also rude, by the way. So I don't do that, but adjustability is key. Now, once I start hitting these drivers, the things that influence me a lot, number one is now I am actually looking a lot for forgiveness, but it is a very specific forgiveness. I know what my misses are, and my misses are misses to the right. Or there are a few with my newer swing where I will snap hook. And so I specifically look for those two misses and see how, when I hit different areas of the club face, how those shots appear in the simulator. And then the second thing I look at is I do look at the launch monitor data. So there's three things that are important to me. Number one is carry distance. Don't look at the total distance because those simulators will lie to you and it's never going to roll out 40 yards. But I do look at carry distance because I know what my stock carry distance is. So when I'm comparing my driver to a new one, I want to know how much further am I hitting this while still maintaining a similar or tighter dispersion. And then the other two that are important for me as someone who's swinging around 115, 160 miles per hour is spin numbers and launch angle. So I have a tendency to launch my balls very, very high. And so I am looking for something in the range of, I think it's around 11 to 13 degrees of launch is what I am looking for personally. And from a spin number perspective, I am looking for something that is closer to between, 2050 to like 2200. And the reason for those numbers for me and my swing speed is that optimizes distance as well as forgiveness.
So, and you kind of mentioned this, and I don't know if I'm going to ruin what comes next for you, but you know what your current numbers are. and you also use aftermarket shafts, right? And we've talked about how, it's a lot of the times, even with all of this new tech in the club head, the shaft is just as important. Do you bring your shaft into the bay with you when you're testing new heads, or are you testing a combination of shaft and head all the time because you know what shaft you're going to go with?
Yeah, I do bring my shaft into the bay. And that's why it is limiting at times. It was nice when I went to a particular store where everyone there kind of knew me, because they would allow me to, they will bring out from their fitting bay my shaft in different adapters and allow me to try it with the different drivers. So that was really nice. But yes, I do want to start with my stock shaft. But every year, with the minor changes that they make from each driver to driver, your shaft profile, plus, for me right now, I think at a point where I am starting to get a little bit older. And so my swing speed is, I think every year going down by like half a mile per hour. And so, your swing is changing and your body is changing. And so does the shaft that you got fitted for still the ideal shaft for you? So I will test it out. I'll even test out the stock shaft just to see, how does the stock shaft perform this year? Because I will say the stock shaft, even though it has never fit me, I do think it fits, I would say, about 70% of the golfers out there. All the OEMs have created a shaft profile that fits their driver head for that year that works for majority of the players. And so I will try it out just to see. But yeah, I will play around with shafts, but using my own as like the benchmark.
Interesting. What would make you buy a new shaft? Because, I think you talked a lot about the tech, the looks, the feel of the club head, right? And then you're going in with your stock shaft or your shaft, I should say, rather, as a basis, right? So that's how you get your baseline, right? What would you want to see to be like, you know what, I'm going to go with something different altogether?
So I think consistency is what shaft helps with the most. I was recently talking with my brother because he was like, hey, how much does a shaft actually impact my numbers? And I will say that from a number standpoint, that's a little bit more of the head. Like if you're launching too high, changing the loft is going to impact that data a lot more than the shaft profile. Same thing with spin, but I feel like with the shaft, it's about consistency that fits my swing. So how many times can I hit it the same way and the numbers be the same? The misses, the shot shape look the same. I think that is a lot more of the shaft. And so what will cause me, I think for me, it's right now, if it's a much tighter dispersion. If I'm getting the same distances or if I'm hitting it a little bit longer, obviously that's always a big, big bonus. But if I'm hitting my numbers, but improving it, especially in the dispersion area, I think I would change my shaft.
Got it. Interesting.
And I will say though, the feel is still important. And you're going to think, what do you mean feel? Your shaft is, so stiff. How do you feel anything? But for me, I'm so used to that feel of it being very boardy. And so because of that, if it's too bendy, like especially in the midsection, it actually makes me lose confidence because I feel like I have to hit perfectly. Otherwise that flex in the midsection is not going to be the same every single time. So oddly enough for me, the feel of a boardy shaft gives me more confidence.
I mean, that makes sense. And it's like, not only is yours very stiff, but it's also where is the kick point? Because for me, like I always felt, and I've gone through this journey of like drivers and shafts and woods, and have gotten fitted by many different kinds of fitters. And sometimes the numbers looked better when I had a low kick point shaft, but I hated the feel of it. Right? It just, for me, in my hands and the way that I swung, it felt so whippy, and like I couldn't control where the club head was. And it was still like, a stiff, X stiff, whatever it was at the time, right? So like, I totally, I know what you mean, right? There's this weird, like, I've said this before, the dynamic gold S300s.
Yeah.
For the longest time, that was the stock shaft on like almost all irons that you would get.
Right.
And so no matter what club it is, if I have that shaft, like I feel comfortable. Like, it feels like home, right? Like, so that makes sense. But for our like, and I'm thinking of one of our friends that recently went in for, some iron fittings and didn't necessarily know what questions to ask. And, maybe they won't get the best fitter, which, happens more often than not, but what are the questions that you are going to recommend for people to ask to make sure that they're getting what they should out of this experience, versus just kind of blindly following a fitter that may or may not be, giving them the right advice?
Yeah. So we'll probably talk about this, in the later segment as well, but I don't think that you should go to a fitter unless you know your game to a certain level. When you know your misses, something that I talked about, the first thing that I look for, aside from like the subjective looks, right, is what are my misses and how does this driver help you kind of control or hit better misses? Because essentially in the game of golf, it's so hard to be perfect. And the pros even talk about it. This is a game of misses. So which equipment helps me with my misses the best? And so if you know what your misses are, I think you can ask questions around that. If you know that you have a problem with, slicing 9 out of 10, you should ask him, how does this driver help with slices? Because there are draw biased clubs that do make it a little bit easier to square the club face, even if it is wide open at the halfway mark on your downswing.
Right.
And so I think a lot of the questions should be around your misses, and also what is your goal? Like, what do you want to get out of this driver? You need to know, because if you don't know that destination, it's hard to go in any direction, right? And I find that's one of the challenges with a lot of golfers is they go into a fitting expecting the fitter to know you when they just met you.
Right.
And so without knowing that becomes very difficult.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, your sequence of thoughts of what you're looking for is interesting to me, because I definitely, it's the same checklist, right? But I think I go in a different order.
Yeah, I was really curious. I was like, I don't think I missed anything, but what is your order compared to mine?
So I start in the same place, in the sense that like I've done enough research on all of these driver heads that I know the general look and feel, the look, right? The shape, and some of the tech. That's kind of where I start. And like you, if I can, I'll hit my shaft. But from there, I look at feel or for me, it's like feel first, right? And I think this is maybe a recurring thing with me. Like, my consistency is not so good that I think, I'm necessarily going to have the best day with some of my numbers, or, maybe even my dispersion and, whatever it's going to do from a forgiveness standpoint. But if it feels good to me, right? And that's both the shaft, the load, and through impact, right? And what I'm really thinking of is the last driver that I bought, the QI10, not the 30 that I said last week, because I don't know what I was thinking. There's no QI30, just for our listeners. The QI10, the driver I was playing before that was the Stealth 2. And I remember so vividly when I put the QI10 on the same shaft, the Ventus Blue, and I hit, and I was a little off the center, maybe even a little more off. I remember how much more stable it felt than the Stealth 2, right? Like, through impact. And, part of it is probably, like you said, placebo from all the marketing around the MOI and how much, more stable it should be. But it did feel like that, right? I didn't feel like the club was just like twisting out of control on the mishits, which I did feel a little bit more coming from the Stealth 2. And then so that's really important to me. Just feel how it feels through. And again, that is a lot of that is gonna be shaft. And then from there, I'll take a look at the general numbers, right? Like, what is the launch? What is the spin? What is the carry? And I'll take a look at it. But I don't put a lot of weight into those, because, for me, it's like, day to day, my numbers are going to be so different that, as long as it feels consistently the same, in terms of like how I like how this head and shaft are performing for me, then, from there, I'm just like, all right, that's good enough. Like, I like it. I convinced myself I'm going to buy it probably before I even walked into the bay. So like, I'm good to go. Where's the cash register?
I do have a couple things that I recommend people not do when they go in to buy their drivers. The first thing is, don't just look at the perfect one shot that you hit and say, oh, this driver outperformed another just because of one perfect shot, because you're not hitting that perfect shot. Even Rory McIlroy is not hitting his perfect shot every single time. And so it is much more important, especially in golf, to look at the averages rather than the perfect ideal number that you hit with one single drive. But that is something that I still see a lot of people doing. And their thing is, well, I'm going to practice and my goal is to hit that one perfect shot. And when I do hit that perfect shot, I want the one that goes 15 yards further, right? But the other one on average is hitting farther. So yeah, that's one thing that I would say to avoid doing. The other thing is the opposite end. It is okay for you to throw out obvious mishits from your averages. So if you completely top the ball on one, like don't include that as part of your average. Like it's okay to take that stuff down.
Right.
But there are other people that then take this too literally and they're like, oh, I need to keep every miss on there. No, you don't need to keep the one that went 50 yards in your averages. And the last thing that I recommend is you do get warmed up. And so the first driver that you try is probably not going to have the best numbers. And eventually, it diminishes where you get too tired and the numbers aren't going to be great. But my recommendation is not to go to the hitting bay and hit 100 driver shots. I actually recommend a lot of times for you to first just narrow it down to like 3 or 2 ideally, but then take breaks. Like hit the 2 drivers, find them, and then take a break. Go walk around, come back 15, 20 minutes later, hit one driver, 20 shots.
Yeah.
And then leave again, come back and hit the other driver. That's something that I, highly recommend.
Right. I love that. Also, if, for our listeners out there, if you're in the market and you're about to go do this, don't forget your glove and your golf shoes. Or sneakers that are stable enough for you to swing. I've actually seen so many people, they don't have a glove. I've had friends show up in like flip flops and I'm just like, what do you do? Like, what are you going to do? What are you hitting right now? You got to make sure that you're able to put in some work. So definitely wear comfortable clothing as well, because those jeans are not going to be the same conditions as when you're out playing on the course as well.
Right. Well, whether it's your first time here or you're a regular listener, thanks for joining us and welcome to the Off TRAQ podcast, where we talk all things golf from an amateur point of view. I'm Charles. That's Roy. We're 2 golf-obsessed tech guys, and we're currently working on our own golf startup. Make sure to click subscribe or follow on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts so you don't miss an episode. It will also help us out a lot if you share us with your friends. And follow us on our socials at Track Golf on Instagram and TikTok.
All right, so golf season officially started, right? We have tournaments going on, but I feel like it's a slow news cycle right now. But there are a few things that I wanted to make sure that we kind of touched on because it was kind of interesting. But do you have any that you want to start with?
Yes. Obviously, my favorite golfer, because we're the same height, Rory McIlroy, has changed his irons. Previously, he played the Roars Proto from TaylorMade, which looked like the P7 MBs, but they were made very specifically to his weighting and specs. He has switched over to the P7 CBs, the cavity backs. And I found that to be very, very interesting because we, our very first episode was muscle back versus cavity back. And Rory changing this, I think, was such a big deal because I felt like he was one of the last traditionalists on the tour, from his opinions even to his equipment, minus his driver. And so, that kind of took me, I was very surprised to hear he did that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the reasons that he has publicly stated that he made these changes and just kind of get your thoughts on it. The main thing that he shared was that this is not about forgiveness, and this was actually about consistency, because we talked about golf being a game of misses. And even on irons, Rory, Tiger, Scotty Scheffler, none of the top guys are hitting like a robot the exact same spot every single time. And what he was finding was that with muscle backs, even when he was off just ever so slightly, and we talked about this in our first episode, muscle backs will punish you in a way where it will lose a little bit of distance and lose a little bit of spin. And Rory found that short side miss to be a big issue. And, we saw some of that even at the Masters, right? Some of the shots he missed short. So he said that's the biggest thing. Again, not about forgiveness, but about consistency, where even if you miss ever so slightly, he get consistent launch. consistent spin and consistent distance. So yeah, that's the main reason that he's switching over to a cavity bag.
Yeah, I found that interesting too, because I think he was saying that it's, on a miss hit, he was expecting like maybe 5 to 7 yards of distance loss, but he was getting like 10 to 15. Right. So that's like, 2-3 times what he's expecting. I think that's a full club and a half at that point. So that to me is kind of big. I'm surprised though that it was that big for him, right? Just because he's such a good ball striker, right? And we've said this before. He's not known necessarily as the best iron ball striker. There are other guys that kind of have that, more of that reputation. But even for him to say he's losing a club like on a miss hit, like to me that's wild. Like then it's like there's no point in my mind of any amateur anywhere ever playing musclebacks. Other than for the look of feel, right? If Rory is losing a full club every single time, like none of us mere mortals have a chance. It's kind of like, the conclusion that I drew from it. But that's crazy.
And Rory is not missing on the heel or on the toe. He is literally missing by like 0.5 millimeter to one side or the other. And so that was surprising. Though the one thing though that I've heard a lot from fitters that have commented on this is that he swings at such a high ball speed that it is possible, especially coming from a spin number perspective, that even mishitting it by like 1 millimeter at his speed can create a bigger gap in terms of distance and spin. So that's the main, I think, feedback that I've heard about the volatility when you are swinging at his speeds.
That's fair. I didn't think about it that way, but that makes a lot more sense. We're not getting, or most of us aren't getting anywhere close to where he is.
Yeah. So for amateurs, keep playing musclebacks.
I say that like I literally just pulled out my musclebacks out of the closet like 2 days ago because I was like, we're gonna play these again. We're gonna start practicing with these musclebacks again. Probably will regret that.
But this is such a boost for the P7 CBs because even last year, obviously these aren't brand new models. The P7 CBs have been around for a while, and even last year, a lot of people were saying that they love the P7 CBs. And so I think this is going to be a real big boost for people trying to check them out. I tried it and I still, like, if I had to pick a club today, I think I would still lean the T100s or even the newest JPX Pro line from a feel perspective. TaylorMade irons always felt a little clicky to me, and not as soft. But the people that play the P7 CBs loved it last year, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to go into the bay and hit it. But it's I think it's a pretty big news that Rory is switching over to CBs.
Yeah,
and now how many people are playing musclebacks on the tour level that out of like the top players that I know Scotty Scheffler is, but I can't think of anyone. Is Justin Thomas playing musclebacks? I'm going to look it up.
I don't remember.
Justin Thomas, because Justin Thomas, okay, so he has kind of like a hybrid thing, but so he is playing musclebacks from like 6 to 9, but he has the T100s for the 5, T200s for the 4.
He's doing his own combo set.
Yeah.
Which I think there's probably a lot of those. And I think even the last time I bought musclebacks, which was 2018. Yeah, it's been a while. It was a combo set. I got like the 5 and the 4 in the CBs instead of MBs. So it was also from 6 to pitching wedge, all in the musclebacks. That I get behind it. That I support, right? Like, there's no reason to kill yourself to try to get the perfect strikes on the longer irons where there's enough of that tech. But for me, it's shocking that Rory would go, because he changed his whole bag, right, to CBs. It's not a combo set.
It is kind of a combo set. It's 5 through 9 is the CBs, and then his pitching wedge through lob, which is essentially a muscleback, and then his 4 iron is a P760, which I don't think you can buy retail right now.
Right. But I'm surprised that he went even through the 9, right? Because I feel like for like definitely 8-9 pitch, maybe even 7-8-9 pitch. I felt like the pros were good enough where, and there's enough loft on the club where, the musclebacks wouldn't really hurt them that much, right?
Yeah.
Versus, because the counter argument I've always heard is the CBs, no matter how much of a Players CB it is, introduces a little bit of springiness, just because of how it's weighted, and there's a little bit of a trampoline. I don't know how true that is, but it's like almost like the variability goes the other way, right? Like if you're hitting it 150 consistently, sometimes it'll go 152, 153. Obviously, that's not something that I personally experience. Just very interesting that he would go all CB, but I love it. It's great. Yeah. It's, why not? I went from musclebacks to the T100s. Obviously, Rory and I are the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very curious to see how this season will turn out. He just played at the Dubai Invitational and he finished third, where he used these clubs for the first time. So yeah, curious how that'll look throughout the entire season.
Yeah. Speaking of equipment, so Jordan Spieth playing in the Sony Open, there was this really weird soundbite that he gave. He obviously wasn't playing well, and they're like, what were you doing with the clubs? And it was something like he had 4 months to prepare for this tournament. It's like the day before he went down to the tournament, pulled out like 5 different 3-irons that he has, tried them out. And he was like, I was hitting all of them well. And then so the day before the tournament, decided to put in a 3-iron into his bag, played terribly with it. And then so at the end of the tournament, he was like, I'm going to go back to the hybrid. Like,
oh man,
it's weird that he went on this journey. And then also the day before a tournament that you had 4 months to prepare for, it's when you're going to experiment to the point where you bring 5 different 3-irons. Like, that's wild to me. But also kind of says a lot about like the pros and their equipment, and how much access they have to just equipment in general, that he has 3 different 3-irons that he could pull. But also just not knowing like what he can do and what the clubs are going to do for him. It just felt like a really like bizarre thing. But did you hear this soundbite from him?
I didn't, but I'm not surprised it's coming from Jordan Spieth. And Jordan was at the top of his game, top of the golf world, and he is on this journey of trying to find his game again for the past, I feel like it's been like 6 years now.
Yeah,
and so
it's been a while.
I feel like he is still on this journey of trying to find something that'll work. And I don't know. I feel really bad because we thought he was the next coming of Tiger at one point. Yeah. And he has really kind of fallen from grace. And I feel like if I was in Jordan's shoes, if something is clicking, I would just cling on to that. And so I could kind of see him seeing the 3-irons working and then deciding to bring it out and it not working out.
Yeah. Yeah. He also, he's, I guess, known to be a little bit more temperamental, right? And, he has a lot of sound bites, and his caddy is famous for saying, like half of his job is like calming Jordan down. And his caddy famously used to be a school teacher, right? And he said something like, he's no different than the kids I used to teach, or he's just, like managing the temper. But yeah, I agree that like this is a little bit of like looking for and trying to get lightning in a bottle again, right? Like just trying to find something to reignite the spark. I just found it really weird that it was a 3-iron that he tried this with, right? Versus something a lot more drastic from like your total club setup or just like from on the scoring side, right? Like change your putter, sure, right? Or your wedge setup, sure. But like, what's a 3-iron going to do for you, and how often are you hitting it? That's the thing that you're experimenting with.
Yeah. Do you know how often he hit it at the tournament?
I actually don't. I should look it up. But
okay,
actually, let me see if I can find it.
But I really wish, because I think the golf world is a lot better when the big names, the names that everyone, the casual golfer knows is performing well. So I really wish for Jordan to find his game soon. Because, again, at one point, his short game and his putting is something that we talked about potentially stealing if we had to steal someone's skill at a very specific aspect, right? But even those, the putting as well as the short game hasn't quite been there in the past few years. It's still, above, the top 50, but it's not where he was, which is like top 5.
Right. It does not say how many times he hit it, but he self-claims that it cost him 2.5 shots. Which is interesting. How something costs you a half a shot, I still am not quite sure, but we'll go with it. Moving on from that one, we talked about this quite a bit. Brooks Koepka had just announced that he's leaving LIV, had not confirmed that he was going back to the tour. But all of the speculation was that he was going to, and lo and behold, he's back. and with a lot of financial penalty, right?
Oh, yeah.
That it's going to make it work. And honestly, I feel like somebody listened to our podcast and then decided to take all of the ideas, and that's what they imposed on Brooks. Because it was exactly what you said, right? Not allowed to participate in the PIP. He has to make a donation just to make it hurt. And he even admitted it will hurt him financially, like upwards. They're estimating somewhere between $50 to $90 million worth of penalty over the next 5 years or so. And then they also took my thing, right? Where they said, okay, cool. Brooks is coming back and we're giving everybody amnesty if you want to major between this year's, which kind of goes to the popularity thing, right? It has to be some of the bigger names popularity. But they made it, what was it? Specifically, if you want to major between 2022, I think it was, and 2025.
Yeah.
I feel like it was intentionally to keep Phil Mickelson out.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Phil won in 2021.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, kind of like a giant F you to Phil, which I love it. And then nobody took it.
No.
But because it lined up a lot to what we were talking about. Do you think the penalty was right? Do you think it was enough of a penalty for him to warrant coming back and playing immediately?
I think it depends on the viewpoint. If I am a fan of the PGA Tour, I could argue that it basically became a wash because the contract that Brooks Koepka signed, obviously it's not public, but the speculation was that he signed something a little bit north of $100 million in 2022 for it to run the same duration as Bryson's contract, which ends at the end of 2026. So he basically got out of the contract 1 year short. So I think the value is estimated to be around $75 to $90 million that he earned while he was at LIV. And the penalty is around that amount. Right. But let's talk about what he had to give up a little bit more in specifics. So number one, he had to give a $5 million charity donation. He forfeits all the tour bonuses and the equity. So the PGA Tour got rid of the PIP and they changed it with the PEP, the PEP. That's right. It's the equity program now because they realized, well, with the PIP, someone can take all that money and then leave. Whereas the equity, you have to vest it like you're with a company. And it'll, exceed, I think, what the PIP was worth in the long run, but, it's not money upfront. So for 5 years, Brooks does not take part in either of those. He also will not be able to perform at the signature events as a sponsor exemption. He has to earn his way in. And him earning his way in, I would argue, is a pretty daunting task because I think you have to be top 10 in the FedEx Cup points in order to make the first couple signature events. And for him to do that, he would either have to win a tournament or routinely finish in the top 10 in a lot of his early tournaments. And Brooks hasn't been performing at his peak even at LIV. And so I don't know if he's going to qualify for the signature, but if he does, great. But yeah, so as a tour fan, I would say, yes, this was fair. The tour probably could have even pushed it a little further. I'm surprised because if I was in Brooks's camp, if I was his agent, I would say, bro, you actually have some leverage here. Why? Because the report so far is that he did not push back on any of this. This was what the tour proposed. He had no counter proposal. He just agreed. And so from a Brooks fan standpoint, I would be like, why did you just agree? You had some leverage here. The tour does want you back. So it leads me to think two things. Number one, man, he must have hated his time at LIV. And Brooks Koepka is the one player who did not really embrace the team concept or even the branding. If you wouldn't know this because you don't watch LIV, but every team member wears their brand. Bryson has that skull and crossbone on his hat, his shirt everywhere. Dustin Johnson, part of the 4 Aces, has that 4A everywhere. Brooks' team was called Smash GC. He never wore any of their branded products. He still wore Nike the entire time he was there. He was the one player, and he was their team captain. And he was the one player on the team that didn't wear the team brand. And so I was like, man, he really must have not liked his time at LIV. And he was like, I don't care. As long as it's a wash, as long as I'm not losing money, just get me out of here. Get me back on the tour. And so I feel like that's what happened in this case.
Right. Yeah. I think so. I mean, it was very clear that there were certain players that went just for the money, right? It's not like they had the philosophical differences with the PGA, which a lot of them did, but it wasn't that. It was just like, cool, big paycheck, I'm down, let's go. And he definitely was one of them. But I agree with you. For him to not push back at all, right? Yeah. Like, even if you didn't have leverage, you're going to attempt to do some kind of negotiation, right? And we'll talk about this a little bit too, but like, he could have gotten like one other player just to like agree to do this with him.
Right.
And they would have had so much leverage together. But no, he was just like, I'm good, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys later.
Well, Brooks is never really known to be like that social golfer that gets along with everyone. So I don't think he had that many friends that would have jumped with him to begin with.
Right.
But the second part why I think he didn't negotiate is that I do think it is very stressful to go into a work environment where everyone hates you. And so I think him not negotiating is also his way of saying, hey, I basically did everything you guys asked for. So cut me some break. Like, especially to the other players. I think it's a messaging to the other players that my bad, I made a mistake, but I'm back.
Yeah.
Let's forget. And
it seems to have worked, right? Because even Rory, who has been very, very outspoken, like just about everything for the last few years, but even he was like, yeah, like he paid his penalty, he did it, whatever, like, cool, he's back.
Yeah.
And has been very like not nonchalant about Brooks coming back and not making a big deal of it, which I would agree with you, right? I think Rory, who is so outspoken in general and not afraid to share his opinions, makes it feel like, okay, for the most part, this is going to be accepted by players. But, at the end of the day, better competition in the PGA Tour makes me happier, because that's the thing that for me, like I've been missing, like the good names all in one.
And honestly, I didn't expect anyone else to take the deal, because for number one, they have to get out of the Liv contract, which I think Liv even gave to Brooks because Brooks was just so pissed off that they were just like, let's just let him go. But I don't think Liv would have given like waived the contract for someone like Bryson. Or for Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm hasn't been there, and Bryson right now is arguably their biggest star. But going into that a little bit, it is rumored. So Bryson has 1 year left on his contract. It is rumored that he is asking for $500 million over 4 years. So he's basically asking for $125 million per year for him to stay at Liv. If they grant him that contract, he would be making more money per year than Shohei Ohtani, than Lionel Messi, LeBron James. What do you think about that?
I think that's stupid. Not for Bryson. If he can get it, more power to him. I think for anybody to give him that is genuinely dumb. And I see the need for the really big paychecks up front when Liv was forming, to be disruptive, to draw some of the big names, to make a viable play at Liv becoming a legitimate competitive product to the PGA Tour. I think at this point, it's been proven that they're not going to disrupt golf so much that they're going to steal all of the eyeballs, and therefore all of the ad revenue and all of the, the commercial aspects that come with being the largest golf entertainment product. Like it's just not going to happen, right? If anything, it's split the audience. For a lot of people like me, I've lost interest in both of them now, right? Like I just don't watch either of them anymore. And so for them to recoup on a single person $125 million a year is insane. Like they're not going to get that revenue. Right? Messi brings in revenue, right? He literally sells out every single stadium that he's going to play in.
Yeah.
Right? Shohei, generational player, right? Like, again, like sells out games. Like people go just to watch him play.
I mean, with Shohei Ohtani, the Dodgers made back the $700 million contract in 2 years because of international interest, because of sold out Dodger Stadium, 2 World Series rings.
Yeah.
Like he's now going to turn them on ROI.
Right. And even just like the merch, right? Nobody is buying Bryson branded skull and crossbones. Like, you know what I mean? Like the economics of it are so upside down. There's no way they're going to make that money back on Bryson, especially with just the viewer ratings that they have right now.
And I'm a big fan of Bryson. Like I kind of like his science meets chaos type of personality. And, he is, I would argue, the number one visible golfer in the world today because of his YouTube channel, social media.
Right.
But that plays a bigger role than the actual live tournaments. And I don't hate live like you do, but I still don't feel like I have to watch it every single time.
Right.
He doesn't have the presence that Tiger had. He's not changing the game like Tiger. I don't think Bryson is consistently dominant enough to ask for that. I mean, I don't think he's even ever going to be number one in the world again. He has a tough hill to climb with Scotty in the way. So yeah I think it's going to be tough. And Liv, it's not like these teams where with Ohtani, he plays 162 regular games. LeBron James plays 82. I don't know how many the MLS plays, but I think it's still around 40, 50. And so they get week in and week out visual of people watching him perform. Liv, what? They have 10, 12 tournaments a year? 16 tournaments?
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't even know how many, right? And so I think it's going to be tough for him to get it. But if he can get it, all power to him. Get that money.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of got buried at the bottom of the news just because of everything else that's been happening. But apparently Dustin Johnson just re-signed his live contract.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there's some guys that just, they're perfectly content to just live out the rest of their career, just making a lot of money, not being competitive or relevant to the sport of golf anymore. It seems like Bryson is not doing that. He's still very relevant, but just trying to make an asinine amount of money, which again, more power to him. But yeah, I don't see anybody going for this, but if they do, I would love to meet them because I have a few products to sell them of my own.
But Dustin Johnson, he wouldn't have been even included in the amnesty program if he wanted to go back.
He hasn't won in forever.
And he had a down year at Live. If he performs the way he performed at Live on the tour, I think he's going to miss a lot of cuts. And so I think this was absolutely the correct move for DJ to resign. I'm sure he's still got a good amount of cash. And he just gets to chill. And his demeanor also, he's just, decaf, very chill.
Yeah.
Low key. I think it fits him how he's going to close out the career. Well, as always, today's episode is brought to you by TRAQ Golf, the training system designed to help you practice like the pros. The TRAQ spray shows you exact strike patterns on turf or grass. It also allows you to do drills just like the pros that you wouldn't dream of doing with alignment sticks. And the blueprint helps you build structure into every session. Together, they take the guesswork out of practice so you can actually improve faster. Find out more at traqgolf.com. That's TRAQ golf.com. All right. Well, for our final segment today, we talk a lot about you needing to go get fitted. But, we live in Los Angeles. There's a lot of stores here. There's so many golfers out here. And yet, every year I get friends asking, do you know any good fitters? And I don't have a answer right off the top of my head. I've had good fitters in the past in the LA area, but they move around. They're no longer here. They've retired. And so even for me, I'm constantly searching for a good fitter. Why do you think it is so hard to find a good fitter?
That is a great question. I think, first of all, if you really think about it, there's a lot of fitters, right? Every big box store has one. You have your club champions of the world, your golf techs of the world. And so there's a lot of them out there. And that they're not all, they must obviously like golf, right? Because they're making a career out of it. And they need to know enough of what they're doing that they got some level of certification. But I don't know that they're the obsessed, this is what they want to do and really achieve to be the best at what they're doing. So you have people that are just treating it like a job. And like any other job, if you're just in it for the money and for the paycheck and you don't really care how good you are, then, you're just going to pump out a mediocre product. And I think that's the majority of the fitters that are out there. Also, honestly, what does it mean to be a master fitter or a certified fitter? Even the level of certification is kind of all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And there is no one universal standard because a lot of whether or not you're qualified comes from the OEMs themselves. I think most of these people are just trying to hit a checkbox and do enough of it without really trying to, and like you said, get to know the player, right? Get to know them as a person and be able to walk them through that versus, they're just like, cool, I'm going to sell. Like my whole point is to just sell you a club. Like, let me put you through enough of the paces and bada bing, bada boom, there you go.
Yeah. No, I think you touched up on two main things that I noticed when I go to fitters. When I go to fitters, not all of them are crazy about golf specs. I think the last 3 fitters that I've seen, 2 of them are former players that decided to pursue this route. And also their goal wasn't to be a fitter for the rest of their life. This was kind of like a stop. Like one of them wanted to eventually go work for an OEM and another one wanted to actually do lessons. And then this was just one way to make money. And so I think, it's very difficult to find someone who is passionate about club fitting. I think also the economics of it, like to do a good club, there's one club fitting that I got. It took 4.5 hours and he was so thorough.
Yeah.
But I knew he was just as passionate about it as I was about getting my clubs right. But most sessions are 45 minutes, right? An entire bag may be like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And so it's very difficult, I think, to find the right set of clubs in that such short span. And another thing that you touched upon, which is, I think, an uncomfortable truth, is that most fitters are sales reps. They make a commission off of what they sell. So, I don't want to put them on blast because there are some good fitters, but like Club Champion, like most of them get a very low base and they make money on commissions on the actual sale. So their compensation, job security, like the store metrics are tied to closing a sale. So that's why you go. And I've had beginner friends who got fit for these exotic aftermarket shafts. And it's because they have crazy margins, right? But there's no reason that they needed that at their handicap. Yeah. Also, I think a lot of the head shaft combinations are optimized for launch monitor data and not real performance on the course. And two other issues that I find with a lot of like these big fitters is that number one, you're also fit into what's in stock. And depending on the fitter, they don't have everything. A lot of times, like things are on loan with different stores. And so they might actually not have the perfect shaft for you. So they're just like, let's see just whatever we have in stock and whatever fits best among our inventory, but it's not the full catalog. So I find an issue with that. And then the other thing is they don't know everything in the category, in the catalog. And so the fitters will push you on products that they're trained on and that they know a lot about, but again, might not be the perfect fit for you.
Yeah. I think I didn't really think about it as much, but I was thinking about the last 2 times that I got fit by quote unquote professional fitters, and I'm not talking big box. I'm talking about like the club champions of the world. Actually, let me just say both of them were a club champion, right? Because I was like, great, I'm gonna like legitimately invest in some clubs, and I went in to get 3-wood and a driving iron. And I still have both, and they're phenomenal. I love them. Like if I hit my 3-wood well, and this is more personal struggles than the club, like it goes almost as far as my driver, right? It's just it's amazing. And the experience overall was awesome. And I wish I remembered the guy's name. I know he's not there anymore because the next time I went back, I looked for him, and they said he didn't work there anymore. But I didn't think about it until now. With what you're saying is, I had the last slot of the day. And so he went like an extra 30 or 40 minutes with me trying out different things that he wanted to see. And he obviously loved what he was doing too, that he was willing to just spend this time, just be like tweaking some things. Right. And this is when it was like the gapper, right? So I have like a gapper 2-iron driving iron. Right. And so like, it was like, do I go to the full hybrid? Do I go to the thinner one? And he just let me try out everything. He was very knowledgeable and just invested a lot of time into it. And I like gladly walked out paying for these 2 clubs and aftermarket shafts. And I was like, fantastic. A year later, I went back to get a driver, and this guy was so obviously like, he had almost this like arrogance of like, you're not consistent enough. And I hear that a lot from people that go in to get fitted, right? That the fitter is like, you're not consistent enough for this to make a difference for you. So it just becomes like, what can I sell you on? Yeah. Since then, I have not gone back to a fitter because there was some things, and this is maybe on me as well, where, there was some specs that we were talking about and he was writing them down, and it was like a little nebulous on the shaft length. And he actually went a half inch shorter than I thought he was going to. And I didn't catch it until later, right? Because when I picked up the club and I was like, oh, this is fine. And I was like, oh, it's going pretty good. And then later I ended up measuring it. I was like, wait a minute, it's a lot shorter than I thought. And I tried emailing Club Champion. I'd be like, this isn't what I agreed to. But I also had no proof, right? And then, a lot of time had passed by. So that left such a bad taste in my mouth that since then I have not gone back to a professional fitter, nor do I trust any of the big boxes anymore. And I think we're knowledgeable enough that I'll just go by myself. And I think this comes back to like, if I could find that guy that put me into the 3-wood, no matter where he is, I would go follow that guy.
Yeah.
Right. And I would have him fit me because I trust him as a person. And I think with few exception, because I know we know a few fitters that like that they are their own brand. But outside of that, like there's not really a level of trust in this person's capability that I think needs to be there for something of this depth.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I after I thought about this, I was like, I wonder how you can make this better, but there's no accountability loop, right? The moment that they sell you, it's not like you can go back in 6 months and say, hey, you fit me for this and it's not performing. Give me my money back or give me a new club. You actually don't know if it's actually improved on course, right? Like there's no like communication with the fitter again. And so, yeah, it becomes very limiting relationship where they want to get you into a club. They want to charge you, build it for you. And then as soon as you leave, that loop is like broken. And I don't know, maybe this is why they are constantly changing fitters, but a lot of the big stores, you go back a year and the same fitter's not there anymore. They move on from one thing to the other. And the stores themselves don't take accountability. And so you go and say, hey, this club sucks, or the fitting process was horrible. Because I've had a friend who got a putter fitted. And I think about 2 months later, he was like, dude, like this putter is not working for me. And he actually went back to the store and he was like, whatever you did, like it's not working. And they were just like, well, it worked that day. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And plus that fitter wasn't there anymore. And so they're like, well, we weren't there. It must have worked because you agreed to it and he fit it for you, but we have no knowledge of it because we weren't the ones that fit you. And so that left a very terrible taste in my friend's mouth and he never got fitted ever again.
Right. I think there's, there's obviously that, but the other side of this is, like you're saying, there's no loop, there's no accountability. And I feel like if you're a part of a club, or a member at a private club, where you have the head pros and the club makers, builders, and the fitters that are also associated, there's some accountability there, right? Because it's like your members that you have to, like, you're going to see them time and time again. So if you're not performing them, they're just going to be pissed off and you're going to be out of a job. Where I feel like maybe there's a slightly different experience there, but where it's very transactional. Right, you see this person for an hour and they might never be there again. Yeah, I don't see how you really build up a good experience doing it in this transactional way versus like really investing time into people and learning about them and helping experiment and being able to figure out some good answers that way.
Yeah, but also with the latest like surge of golfers, I think the people that have access to that type of club membership is less than 2% now. And so for 98% of the golfers, like they're not going to have that relational aspect. But, there is a little bit of responsibility on the golfer as well.
Yeah.
And we talked about this in our first segment, but you do have to know your swing to a certain degree. For me, I think you really have to know your misses and know how you're performing on the course, where if they ask you, tell me about your game, it's not just, I shoot a bogey game. Right? Like that doesn't help a fitter. And so you have to care enough to be able to explain what your game is. And the other aspect also is that they need to know what they want out of the club. And the issue that I've seen in fittings is, I want to hit my 7-iron 175 yards. And I'm like, bro, you don't have my swing speed. You can't hit it 175 yards.
Right.
But that's what they want. A lot of amateur golfers want distance. And so, and they tend to overswing in fittings. Like it's not their swing. Yeah. I think they come in kind of wanting a validation for a purchase. And so that kind of just leads into what their goal is anyways, the fitters, which is to sell you something. So I feel like, the individual golfer needs to be a little bit more educated about the fitting process and what you want before going into a fitting as well.
Agreed. Well, I'm going to go get fitted for a few clubs this year. So if there's anybody out there that knows a good fitter in the greater LA area, let me know, and maybe we'll go hit them up.
Yeah. And if we find a good hitter, because there is someone that I'm going to try fitting with, I'm going to start blasting him everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's get some good fitter reputations out there for the greater LA area. Thank you everybody for sticking around. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite podcast platform, and check out our Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Track Golf, TRAQ Golf. That's enough getting off track. May your mulligans be many and your 3 putts be few.